Welcome to Your Story, His Glory with Janelle Barker. Today we're going to talk with Victor Tucker, and we are super excited to hear from him. I've known Victor for quite a few years, and the one thing you might be able to recognize Victor from is he's the guy that always has an awesome dad joke. And he can always make people smile. He uses that as a really great tool to break the ice. And so if you're at church and you see a guy that walks up and brings in a little dad joke and makes you smile, don't stress. If you don't laugh, he'll laugh anyway and makes it all better. So, Victor, thank you for coming. Thank you for being willing to share your story for his glory. And I love that you know how to interact with people and to immediately make them feel comfortable. And it's a really neat way that you often get to know people.
Thank you.
So, will you give us a little introduction of yourself beyond dad jokes?
Sure.
And all right.
Well, since you gave me that cue, I feel like I'm compelled to tell a dad joke.
I totally opened the door for that.
Yes, you let me walk through. I will do that. So, did y'all know that I used to be addicted to the hokey pokey? But then I turned myself around because that's really what it's all about. So now that that's out of the way, thank you, Janelle, for letting me
I love it.
share my testimony with you, my story. I'll just start from the beginning, but I won't take a lot of time. I'm the youngest of 9 kids. Uh, I'd like to thank my producers, Paul and Julia Tucker, as they continued having kids. I jokingly tell people that mom and dad finally found out what was causing that condition, and so they were they had me, and then they stopped because I think they didn't want to take a chance on anything worse than me. So that's what I did. Like I said, I'm the youngest of 9 kids. I have 5 brothers, 3 sisters. 3 are passed away, and as I've been at Heritage for 30 years. We moved back here from California in 1995, and we started living in the house I grew up in. That was God's handiwork. I was all over that. What I've done in my life, is just as far as an introduction, is I've been involved in a lot of different type of work situations, but two of the work situations that bring me great joy were being a hospice volunteer when I first moved back to Tennessee. I was able to be a hospice volunteer. I was able to be a volunteer hospice chaplain. And then in the course of those 12 or 13 years, I was able to become a licensed hospice chaplain. And I got to visit people in one of their most stressful times, close to death, end of life issues. That brought me great joy. Another thing that I'm a licensed, well, not licensed, I'm a certified peer recovery specialist, which means that I have worked in substance abuse recovery for many years. And so that brings me great joy also. My wife and I have been married for 41 years. I'm happy to have her here off camera, and she has stuck through me through some mostly good years, but there was some desert wanderings for a while. So that's where I'm at today. We have 2 daughters, Mary, Lori. They're 52 and 55. And we have just living life together for these last 41 years. Thank you.
Awesome. That's a great introduction. Very um, interesting that you did come back to this area. And so, where would you like to start in your story? When did you become a Christian? Is usually the first question that I ask. Were you here in this area when you did come to Christ?
Yes, I was here in this area. I grew up at Oak Grove Baptist Church. That's where my formative years for religious training started. That's where I became a believer when I was age 9. Um, we lived in a family who loved the Lord. You know, we went to church twice on Sunday, once on Thursday, once on Wednesday rather, did the Vacation Bible School, did everything. And I became a believer when I was 9 years old during a revival, which we had at Oak Grove Baptist Church. And it turns out that the evangelist was Reese Harris. Uh, he was from Sinking Creek Baptist, and so he gave the altar call, and I went forward, and I believe that's the day I accepted Jesus as my Savior. Um, I came to find out much later, just like 2 or 3 months ago, that a member of our church, Mark, Reese's son, he goes here, he worships here, and I thought that was a pretty neat connection. I got to talk to Mark about his dad, and I can't thank Reese, but I was able to thank Mark for the legacy that his dad left for in this community.
Wow, that's awesome. I didn't know that connection either. That's great. Um, so, as a 9-year-old coming to Christ and um, living in a home where you actually are taken to church regularly and have Christian parents and siblings, I'm sure, um, you probably were set on the straight and narrow.
Yes, yes, I was set on the very straight and narrow. It was very regimented. Um, we had not only did we go to church all the time, and I jokingly tell some people a lot of times that I felt like I was born in the nursery at Oak Grove Baptist Church because we were there all the time. And so it was very regimented. We had daily devotions at night. Uh, if we were in the house, if anyone was in the house that I grew up in, they were in the front living room while Daddy read the uh, Baptist Quarterly, and we called it the daily Bible readings. So yes, I got good religious training uh, at an early age and was involved with church work up until I was 23 when I moved away. I was involved with that church.
Okay, so you didn't move away till you were 23.
Yes.
Okay. That's wonderful. And, as parents, we try to instill those wonderful um, traditions of going to church and learning and growing, and then opening that up into our homes and living that out while we are, just interacting day to day. So that's sounds like your parents worked hard to instill those good values.
Yes.
So, I know that within your story, you don't always stay close to those things that you've been taught and reading in God's Word and walking with Him. Will you tell us a little bit about how those decisions came about?
Sure. Yes, I felt like that. I was the guy who always wanted to fit in. I fit in at church. I followed the rules. I went along to get along oftentimes, and I found that that did not always serve me well. I succumbed to peer pressure quite often as I grew up. I got along with everybody. Uh, I was a classic chameleon. If I was with you, I acted like you. So much so that when I was a senior in high school at Daniel Boone High School, I was elected Mr. Daniel Boone, which was just a popularity contest among our senior class. But what that meant for me was that meant that I got votes from the athletes. We call them the jocks. I got votes from the academic world. We call them the nerds. I got votes from the outcasts, the smokers, the smoking crowd. And so I just drew these people around me and I learned to act like they acted, which did not serve me well. And I still struggle with that today. So that's how I that's how it affected me. And yet I've been able to overcome some of that. But it's still a daily decision to be more like Christ and less like other people.
It's very insightful. I think that's a great lesson, and something that often takes years to even recognize that you fall into those behaviors of trying to be like others just to be accepted and liked, um, and maybe that title kind of was the icing on the cake to make you realize later, that's the reason that I got it. So
Mhm.
that's neat. Okay, so I can see that, I say you are who your friends are. Be careful who you're around, be careful who are influencing you. And so I can see where we're going, right?
Mhm.
So the people that you were around maybe were not making godly decisions.
No, they weren't making godly decisions. Um, I'm in recovery from substance abuse and alcoholism. Uh, I have not chose to use those substances for 38 years and counting. Uh, but yes, I was influenced by people who made bad decisions. One of the things I do like to bring out in a testimony like this, I was always a good boy if people were watching. Um, but once people were not watching, I became worldly. Um, I played basketball at Daniel Boone High School, and once my senior year was over, um, Coach Bobby Snyder could not have any control over me. So if I drank or got caught drinking or caught smoking, I'd get kicked off the team. And so that's been my pattern throughout my Christian life. Now I was a believer at this time, but I had started straying away from God by my decisions, and I continue to do that from age 18 to age 30. I just run with wrong crowds, and when I moved from Tennessee to California in 1980. Met my ex-wife, and we were married, and we worshiped together, but we had started dabbling with worldly things, and that's how I got to California, uh, where I was able to meet my lovely wife, PJ. And so I had this continuing, like, just do what the crowd's doing. You want to fit in. And I realized that I was really, took me many, many years to realize that I was following man's lead and not God's lead. And Jesus had to teach me some pretty tough lessons to get me back.
So as you meet your first wife, could you tell us a little bit more about how things went wrong and how things ended with that? Because I know that today it is very difficult to be in relationship with someone when maybe there are some addictions and bad behaviors going on. How, how did that dissolve?
Well, it dissolved because we it really started dissolving a couple of weeks before we were to be married, and I really feel like I wasn't in love with Kathy. Once again, I was falling into that trap of, well, this is what she wants to do. We better do it, or she's going to leave. And I always had this fear of rejection around those relationship issues. So I found myself moving to California pretty much against my wishes because she was going to go with or without me. And so I had allowed that her strong personality to influence me, and that's how it started dissolving. And we stayed married for a total of 2.5 years. My drinking had increased when I went to California because nobody was here to watch me. Oak Grove Church wasn't here. My mom and dad wasn't here. My sisters and brothers weren't here. No one was here. So once I got away from the crowd, I stayed away from the crowd for a while, and we started uh, just making bad decisions. I'll just leave it at that, and maybe get into that sometime later.
So, as you begin drinking, your relationships are falling apart, things are not going well. How when did the use begin?
The drug use became shortly, after I started drinking at age 18. The other softer drugs would start. So that became just a thing that we did. If people were doing it, must be good. I had lost my relationship, not lost my relationship with Christ, but I was not living in a way that would be pleasing. I wasn't going to church. I was hanging out with other people who weren't going to church. So if I was with you, I was probably doing what you were doing, and that just continued to escalate. And then when I met PJ in California, she had a couple of daughters, and they were 10 and 12. Being the young kid, the youngest of 9 kids, I didn't have any kids underneath me. I didn't know how to handle any of this stuff. And so what I did, because I didn't know how to raise these girls, I went to the bar. I learned to cope other ways and just sort of forget about these problems. And although I loved PJ dearly and I loved the girls, I wasn't able to tear myself away from that lifestyle. And the longer I stayed in it, the greater the addiction and alcoholism became. So that's how it started dissolving, and it continued to dissolve until a catastrophic event that
S-
happened.
So you used that as an escape,
Uh-huh.
like that, often is the case for drugs and alcohol,
Mhm.
just to mentally escape. But you were both physically and mentally. That if you went to the bar, then you were not there to even see the issues and be involved in arguments or disagreements or frustrations within the home.
Yeah, my whole idea when I was in that period, I didn't want to know about the heavy situations. I didn't want to know about things that PJ was struggling with or the girls were struggling with. I just wanted to be numb and dumb, and that way I didn't have to think about it. And that worked for a bit, but it did not continue to work because God was always pricking my conscience, giving me the idea that, son, this isn't the right thing. You're really doing the wrong thing. And I'll quote my friend Dwayne. God was sort of telling me, like, Victor, you're driving your ducks to a bad market, and I certainly was. And so that's how that came. And I wasn't really a good dad to Lori and Mary. You can't be when you're not there. But all in all, I guess I did okay as a dad, but I just didn't know what to do. I was winging it, and I was putting a lot of responsibility on PJ to do that.
So that's kind of um, the biggest question for me is when you know the Lord and you have the Holy Spirit in you, yet the decisions that you make are hurting the people around you, are hurting yourself, hurting your relationship with God. How does that feel? What does that look like? What's going on internally,
It
or
feels
was it so
terribly.
numb?
It feels terrible. It
Okay.
feels terrible. Yes, I could get numb and dumb for a while, but then you sober up and you realize like the stuff that you've been doing is not right. It's ungodly. It's not God honoring. I certainly would not want Jesus to come back and catch me in those situations that I was at. But it was terrible to live knowing the truth, but not being able to live out the truth in your daily life. And I had this double life going on. A lot of those years when I was in that wilderness, I was going to church. I was doing some churchy stuff, but I couldn't stop the behavior. Uh, it was terrible. Once I realized that there was another way to do this and live this life, and that's how I got exposed to the recovery world. Uh, our daughter was in a adolescent treatment program for 30 days, turned out to be 45 days, which turned out to be 6 months in a sober living situation in San Francisco. Once I heard the message of recovery, and if I speak about recovery, I'm looking at it through my Christian viewpoint, my spiritual lens. And so once I heard the idea that I could live a different way, and I knew the different way was walking back toward Jesus, I could never drink or use the same way ever again. It was always there. I knew better.
One thing that we want to look at is the authenticity of people's lives and how that they are actually living out or not living out their faith in God. And so I appreciate you saying you were living a double life. I think that is helpful for people because we pretend, and sometimes we think that people they have no idea what I do during the week. And I come and I put on the face and I sing the songs and I make sure everything looks good. But deep down, there is a disconnect. There is some pieces missing whenever it comes to relationship with other people. Um, I wonder often, is it that if we actually just took that veil off and stopped pretending and were honest with the people around us, could we actually be successful and in these places, even without recovery ministries? Like, could we just be honest with each other and say, I'm struggling. Would you pray with me? Would you hold me accountable? Would you talk with me? I just want to let you know what's actually going on in my life. People are in churches around the nation that are pretending, and it breaks my heart because I'm learning more about community and learning more about how we can actually build each other up and that we're called to love each other, even in the hard stuff, even in the ugly stuff. And so I appreciate you just saying that's how you were living your life, because I think there's a lot of people who will recognize that maybe they're doing the same thing. How do you help them? How do they stop pretending?
Well, I would say that you stop pretending by pretending that you have it all together. To get a community around you, get one person, start there if you need to. Tell someone the truth about your life and what you're really dealing with. And you don't always have to put on the smiley face and come to church. We should come to church, but I don't have to always put on that smiley face and tell everyone, like, yeah, it's fine. Well, I have found out that fine, FINE, stands for frantic, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. And if I find some of those things, but who wants to look at that, especially in the hallway at Heritage Baptist Church? So I had to drill down. It started for me. I had to find a community group. I had to find a group outside of church that understood where I was talking about. We were like co-sufferers together.
Yeah.
Because I really believe that the church is really meant to come along beside each other and share your life and tell the truth when the inappropriate settings. So I had to start with the worship service. I had to start with the community group. I had to find a man I could trust, I could believe in, I could talk to. Uh, Reggie talks about a board of directors. We all need a board of directors. I have instituted a board of directors in my life of men who I just tell them, I said, would you be my board of director? And I tell them the situations I'm dealing with, and I'm going to seek your advice in these areas. But if they don't know me, they can't help me.
Right. That's right. And it's so scary to be vulnerable. And especially whenever you have built your life on trying to be who people expect you to be.
Mhm.
And I think that comes very easily to women, more so than men, even. We often try to wear the latest and look the latest fashions and all the things that the world tells us are important. And the most important is to make sure you have it together. Um, and newsflash, nobody has it together, right?
No.
It's Jesus in us, it's God's righteousness that makes us righteous. It's our obedience to Him which helps us to walk in His righteousness.
Absolutely.
And so we do want to make sure that in living out our faith, we are being obedient to Him, because that's the only way we could do that, right? And in our obedience to Him comes freedom. So, with that introduction, how did you find your freedom? What was the rock bottom? What was the thing that got your attention that you said, this is built up and this is enough. I'm stopping.
No, sure, I don't mind sharing that. Um, PJ's heard this before. PJ was part of this before, so my rock bottom was just like, I can't do this anymore. I've been drinking and using, mostly drinking for 12 years. Um,
What was the you can't do this? Was it the finances? Was it the arguments? Was it the fact that you saw there is a recovery plan for people who are in places like me when you mentioned your daughter? Like, what was there a pivotal moment that got your attention, or was it just, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired?
well, I think it was that too, but some of the pivotal moments would be I just could not be the man I was and continue living that way. I could not. I had come to the jumping off point, and I had to get sober or I had to go back to God. That was my choices. I had to find the God again that I knew as a young man, or I was just going to go on to the bitter end. And my brother passed away from alcoholism at age 49 after 30
Mm.
years of drinking. I was going to become my brother Jimmy. And so as this happened, I would just always struggle with, I can't do this anymore. Am I a believer? Am I a Christian? Was it really real in when I was 9 years old? And many times in my career of substance abuse, I would come in late at night, kneel in front of something always is on TV late at night at 2:30 in the morning. There was usually a preacher preaching, give the altar call, and I knelt in front of that TV multiple times. God, change me. And finally, He did change me, but it took many attempts, and I had to get out of the way to let Jesus work in me and just say, I'm done.
To recognize there was a stronghold on your life,
Absolutely. Definitely was a stronghold. The devil
even
had a
though
stronghold.
even though your desire was different. Your
Hmm.
desire was for God. I love that you had a memory of what life was as a Christian, as what life was in walking with Him. Even as you began making decisions that were not Christ-like, yet He still held you and pointed you to Him and pointed you to the TV where someone gave an altar call,
Mhm.
and pricked your heart in those moments. Um, I think the path is not always clear and obvious, and it's helpful for me to recognize that there are Christians who make hard decisions and bad decisions and hurtful decisions, but God doesn't love you any less. He keeps running after you. He
Absolutely.
he's the shepherd that runs to get that one lost sheep out of the fold. And what a beautiful example of that in your life.
Well, He was the lifter of my head. I like to quote that
Mm.
Psalms. He was the lifter of my head. I think it's in Psalms. He's a he is who, if I look up instead of looking around, I will get the answers because I'm looking up to Jesus. And even after we have this epiphany of like this, something has to change, I still struggled with obsessions and various things like that, even in my Christian life. 4 years into my sobriety, I made some terribly stupid, appallingly stupid decisions.
Can we talk about that? Because
Sure.
I really want to get into, you make decisions that you're not going to drink anymore, and you're going to this AA, and you're going to get clean, and you're going to turn your life around, and you're going to look to God to help you walk through that. Saying it and doing it are two different things. And we know the flesh is weak. It is hard. Will you speak to that? Because I know there's people who have all the desires to walk alongside Jesus, but keep stumbling and
Mm.
keep falling and have all those same questions?
Mm. Sure. Uh, First, I will just say I didn't say I was going to AA meetings. I was going to recovery meetings,
Mm.
um, but yet I was still struggling uh, with that. And I referenced 4 years into my sobriety, PJ and I walked through a terribly dark valley, and it was because of my poor decisions. I was thought I could fill my heart, my soul with something else that I wasn't supposed to fill it with. And PJ and I suffered a great deal about with relationships and lack of trust. And that was 4 years after I laid down the substances, and yet I'm still making bad decisions in these other areas of my life.
Well, sure, because you had checked out
Mhm.
all of those other years. And so you were at the bar or you were mentally unavailable
Mhm.
or emotionally unavailable. So now you're married
Mhm.
and you're starting a relationship with your wife, which is completely different and new.
Mhm.
And how did you struggle through building that relationship?
Rebuilding it or building it
Well, I think
eventually.
you were building it at all, right? Like you were
Yeah,
building it the first time,
right,
even because you were showing up and you were trying and you were intentional about being sober living.
right, right. Oh, I guess I just struggled through that the best way. I muddled through it the best way I could. Um, I
Have any stories you could share with us about this?
Yeah, I could. I just didn't know how to be a dad. I didn't know how to be a father. Uh, I would rather spend my time elsewhere than come home.
Right.
So I just muddled through that, and I did the best I could. But I was always waiting for other times that I could get away. Um, I didn't. One of the things that I do like to talk about a little bit is like I didn't know how to be a dad. Uh, the daughter that had went through adolescent treatment, her father was a alcoholic. Her biological father was an alcoholic. So PJ and I get married, and I tell this story because it's really pertinent. Our oldest daughter, Mary, who had her own wilderness wanderings, and now she's a wonderfully devout woman of God with multiple years of clean living. She ran away for 2 years in a row on Father's Day. She literally ran away from home 2 years in a row on Father's Day, and I was a stepdad. And I'm thinking like, wow, what is? And I had stopped. Uh, I'm not sure I'd even. I think I had stopped drinking, but I'm not sure. I can't remember that. But I didn't know how to do that, and what God revealed to me is like, Victor, that had nothing to do with you. That had to do with her other history. And that was one of the things how I just muddled through it and I got through it. With my relationship with PJ, I just got through it. I did the best I could do. When we met, PJ had been a single mother for like 6 years, raising two girls, and I was like the knight on a big white horse rescuing the family. Well, in 1981, the knight fell off his horse and our marriage just was in shambles because of my decisions. And
Is that
there,
after the 4 years you mentioned?
yeah, yeah. After I'd been sober for 4 years, uh, I, and the result of that, the fallout from all that, is like we had a no intimacy in our marriage for 2.5 years. But God was faithful and honoring to both of us. We both had people in our life who would tell us like I had this conflict going on because I had some part of my family, friends, who's like, you should just leave her. Uh, she's not fulfilling her obligations. But thank goodness I had some spiritual mentors who said, you need to stay. I don't care if you're sleeping in different bedrooms, you need to stay. I don't care if your daughters are wondering what's going on with her, you need to stay. God chose her for you, and you need to stay. And so that was a story that I always think about, like, God was very, very, very gracious that we are even here today, and have used that experience many, many times over to share in other areas of our life or ministry, that we've able to use that terrible, dark, ugly period of our lives for good, just as it speaks about in Genesis and Joseph's story.
So, I want to jump in a little more personal about your relationship with the Lord. And I'm wondering how did you come to him? What did your conversation with God sound like? Because sometimes we have a hard time actually making a relationship with God really personable. Like it's one of those things that we like to see him afar off, because then we feel a little more comfortable because our sin is not as clear. Was your conversation with him during this time where you're seeing everything fall apart? What was it? What did it sound like?
Well, I knew that I should continue going to church. My wife and I had become faithful members of a Baptist church in California. I knew that I continued to do what I knew to be right, even though I wasn't getting all the right results by my standards. But I knew I did not need to turn my back on God again, even during this desert period. I knew that my salvation was my saving grace, my close knit church group. That was my saving grace. My discussion was like, God, I'm just going to continue doing what I know to do to be right, and just hope it all comes back into place. And it did. God miraculously transformed our marriage. Uh, we are not the same people we were prior to that.
And how did you come to God when you fell down during that 4-year period? When you say it was plenty of things that I did wrong that pushed her away, that created these problems in our family. How did you humble yourself and get through those?
Well, I was humbled. It took outside circumstances to humble me. I could not have humbled myself on my own. I have found that God will use whatever it takes to get his child's attention.
Can you share with us what
Yes,
that outside?
I can share with you about that. I found that, I would always like for God to get my attention with the toothpick,
Sure.
but oftentimes it takes the two before. And this was a two before moment. Like, it was almost like God said, okay, if you want to keep acting that way, we're going to have to do something about it, because I can't have a child of mine out there living like you're living, pretending to be really good in church, and yet you have this double life that had continued. And so in 1991, I was arrested uh, for a act of ugliness.
Mm. That's fair. You don't have to share more. But
And so it was like I was intervened on uh, by the judicial system.
right.
And so that got my attention. I wish that I had listened all those other times, but
Now
but
you're doing something illegal, and
yeah,
so your attention
yeah,
has to shift.
yeah. Usually, people who've been sober for years and have been Christians for a long time usually don't get arrested.
This is true.
And,
This is
and
true.
so I knew that God was really, really serious about this. And if I didn't want to lose everything that I had worked for, I've got to change, and this behavior has to stop.
Right.
And so, and I hurt PJ with my behavior, and I broke my marriage vows.
and it's hurtful, but if that hurt can make you stop, maybe it's worth it, right?
It's worth every minute of it. It's worth. Do I look back with regret? Yes. Do I look back with reservation? Yes. But if I am in tune with what God's wanting me to do, there is nothing ever happened to me that God did not see coming. It's not like I look at God, you didn't see that one coming. No, he's never said that. He always sees that coming. And so we've been able to use that as a platform to help other people. And I know for today, for even in today, that God never wastes a hurt. God will never waste a hurt. You know, I had a lot of time in the Celebrate Recovery ministry, 12-step centered, Christ-centered 12-step work, and God never wastes a hurt.
As a Christian, so many times we want to look at somebody and put them in a category and say, well, they say they're a Christian, but if they're doing X, Y, and Z, they're not a Christian. They don't know Jesus. Guess what? We are all saved by grace, and we are all covered with Jesus' blood if we know him, if we have given our lives to him. But we can still make bad decisions. I think that there's example after example of that in the Bible, especially the Old Testament, and then people who were redeemed to come to know and understand and speak truth into other people's lives so that they can have recovery, so that they can have marriages that are stronger and they can understand who God is and that he comes to us in our weakness.
Yeah, God, I certainly believe that God is sovereign. He knew everything that was going to happen with me. He allowed those things to come into my life. Bad decisions, I made bad decisions, but God still knew what was happening. And he has now allowed us to use all those ugly parts to help others along the way, which I have been able to do through my recovery work, my hospice work, all the things in my life that God has allowed me to do. I would not been able to do that had I not been humbled to that point and say, like, this is enough.
Yes, absolutely. So, you have been able to do a few things in your life that you've talked about being mentor and leading groups where you have helped others in recovery. What is a really great, joyous occasion that you have thing that you've experienced that you can look at and see God did that, but I was able to be part of it.
I think one of the biggest things is seeing people that are new, neither new Christians or new in recovery, and see the light come on in their eyes. Uh, that when they're starting to get it, and God's starting to work with them, and I found out throughout my entire career of recovery that I've been on both rails. I've been in what I call secular recovery. I've been in what I call spiritual recovery, and now they're merging. Every longer I stay around here, they're merging, and I think God wants me working in all that. But when I see a newcomers light up, their eyes light up, and they say, "Thank you, Victor. Thank you for sharing your life with me. Thank you for you helping me." Those are really, really important. And I've seen it in church. I've seen it outside of church. You cannot put a price on that.
I love the term spiritual recovery. I think there's a lot of people who don't recognize. They think they're long gone. They think there's no hope. But there is a spiritual recovery that is Jesus,
Absolutely.
that is redemption through him, and that he makes things beautiful. I do want to share a verse. I don't do this on every episode, but as I was reading my Bible this week, I come across a verse that made me think of you. It's Jeremiah 31:12. They shall come and sing aloud on the height of Zion, and they shall be radiant over the goodness of God. Talking about their joyfulness. not just their looks, but actually seeing Jesus in them and seeing the response of their worship of God, making them radiant. Then the young women rejoice in the dance, and the young men and the old shall be merry. I will turn their mourning into joy. I will comfort them and give them gladness for sorrow. That was verse 13. In 14, I will feast the soul of the priests with abundance, and my people shall be satisfied with my goodness, declares the Lord.
Great.
Um, we don't dwell on the hard stuff from the past. And in God's miraculous ways, He makes us radiant because of Him and His abundance in our lives. That's the beautiful part. That's the miraculous part that we don't get over.
No, absolutely.
We don't get over. And that is one reason that I love hearing stories of how people have been redeemed with Jesus. I know I keep saying that over and over, but that is your story, is redemption.
Redemption all the way. And one of my favorite verses, Janelle, is He who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it.
Until that day.
Until that day, right?
Amen.
And it didn't say how He would complete it, but He did say He would be faithful to complete it. And I've not yet been completed because I'm still on this earthly plane.
Yeah.
But Jesus is always working in my life. And if I am attuned to His leadings and callings, I will do better. I still have struggles, but I don't have the struggles that I used to be. I like to say that I'm not what I once was. I'm not what I want to be, and I'm not what I'm going to be. But thank God I'm not what I used to be.
Amen.
And that's been all about Jesus and my fits and starts with my daily walk. Jesus has always been faithful. He has never, ever, ever left me, although I have walked away. I like to say, and I know we're probably getting close to time. I like to say that in my case, you hear the apple didn't fall from the tree, but in my case, it rolled a long way down the hill, and I had a long way to come back.
That's good.
And God's not done.
That's right. And you've put safeguards in your life to try to derail that apple from going any further, right?
Absolutely. A lone Christian is nowhere in the Bible. It
That's
talks.
right.
I need to have safeguards. I need to have people that I still bounce things off of. Like, I was thinking about this. Men's groups is very important to build that community, that accountability, and that call to righteousness.
Victor, thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for sharing your story for His glory. It's definitely been an opportunity to learn and grow from you, from the hard things, from the good things. And I'm excited to get to talk with your wife, PJ, on the next episode. So we're going to bring her in and have part 2 and get to know a little bit more about your story. So
She
that's
gets the rebuttal.
That's right. And we are excited to get to do that soon. So thank you for sharing your life with us.
Thank you very much.